Thank you, Steve. Um, well, this is stop 5, and there's a nice three-dimensional diagram on in the folder that you have. A sketch that was put together by a mines professor called Fred Moore. He taught freshman geology for probably 30 years, and he did some of this early sketching. I've modified the geology quite a bit, but I wanted to acknowledge Fred's and his patience in terms of putting a sketch like that together. We've got a new photograph taken from helicopters by John Perez Graphics that's going to be over in the new Petroleum Engineering building. And so when that opens, go over and look at it, because it's going to show the geology and a photograph of all this surface. Spectacular. The main thing I wanted to emphasize here again was the importance of the lava flows to the east as resistant rocks capping the mesas, and the hard rock uplifted and eroded on the range. And the reason for doing that is that you get a feel that it's the lithology, that is the composition of the rock, that controls the erosion. So the hard rocks, the igneous rocks like lava flows, or the crystalline igneous and metamorphic rocks like are back here in the range, are the most resistant to erosion. And when you look across the valley here in this panoramic view, you see all the soft sedimentary rocks have eroded away more rapidly than the other rocks. So the topography is very much controlled, topography meaning the landforms, by the composition of the rocks. And also their attitude to a certain extent, what their dip is and so on. And here we have brought here samples of the different formations. And if you look at your folder, you'll find that the formations to the north and to the south are included, so that instead of taking a half day to go to look at the exposures north of us, like where you see that hogback of the Dakota group, or the red beds in the immediate foreground, which is the Lichens Formation, or the Line Sandstone, or in the far skyline, the Fountain Formation. All these formations of North Golden are lined up here. So you don't have to go there if you want to see the composition of the formation. You can walk along here and see it. And then those formations are listed from the Precambrian, Fountain, Line, Lichens, Ross, and so on. A formation is a particular composition, and if you look here, you'll see different composition of these layers that have been brought here, and they take their name from where they were first described. The Fountain Formation, which is present as the Red Rocks type formation, all the way from Boulder and the Flatirons to the Garden of the Gods at Colorado Springs, that's named for Fountain Creek there at Colorado Springs. Here's the Morrison Formation, the big dinosaur-bearing Jurassic Formation, named for Morrison, Colorado, where Lakes and a friend of his, Beckwith, first found the big dinosaur bones there in 1879, and so on. Then you get to the marine beds, and you probably read about the Niobrara Formation. And over here, on the other side of these two big sandstone beds, there's a gray block there of limestone that has marine clam fossils in it. That's the Niobrara Formation. Now, we have another type of rock that we've lined up here. If we start with the rocks in the North Golden area, we would start over there. Let's walk over here. Incidentally, that's the Lion Sandstone. This is the Fountain and Red Beds. These rocks are dated at about 300 million years. These Precambrian rocks are over the 1.7 billion years. I'm standing on a gap of 1.4 billion years. That's called a hiatus or a gap. It's also called an unconformity. Something's missing. And when you see rocks of one composition on one side, igneous metamorphic, and you see sedimentary rocks on the other side, you know there's a big story about changes of temperatures and pressures in terms of what you see. These are types of granite and gneisses, these banded igneous metamorphic rocks that come from back here in the Front Range. And if you look over there, you'll see a sign that says Golden Area rocks, starting with the granites, the white granite and the pink granite and the gneisses. On the other side, famous Colorado rocks. How many of you know what the state rock of several? It's the Yule marble. That white rock is a chunk of Yule marble. That comes from Marble, Colorado. That's over west of Aspen. And it was a marble quarry in the early days that they mined big chunks of rock like that for construction, wherever they could sell the blocks. And one of the important ones was the tomb of the unknown soldier in Washington, D.C. There are other monuments there as well. Right next to it, there's the Green River oil shale. That's a famous Colorado rock. People would like to get trillion barrels of oil out of it. They might have to spend $2 trillion to get it, but they talk a lot about it. And that's an ancient lake deposit, 33, 40 million years ago. Very rich in organic matter. And beyond that, there's some big chunks of rock that come from some of the mining districts here in Colorado. Now, why do all these rocks, many of them have holes in them, different sizes? And how did I get them up here? The mining department here had an experimental drilling lab here, just over the lip of the parking lot. Still operates. They did a lot of contract work on drilling. People would come in, ask them to do research on certain drilling bits, certain types of fluid flow, as the bits were cooled and so on. And so you'll see lots of holes in some of the rocks. Then Engineers Day, they have contests, drilling contests, about that size drill there. When they finished with their experimental work on these rocks, over a period of 20, 30 years, they had a rock yard down there where they just took the rocks and put them out there. They were through with them. And I went down there and went through and looked at them one time, and I could identify where a lot of the rocks came from. And so I got the buildings and grounds, got the idea of moving them up here, putting signs on them, so if somebody wanted to study petrology, like in Chris's course or whatever, they can see what these different type rocks look like. Not little hand specimens out of a little drawer in a lab, but something that's more realistic as it relates to nature. And so we've got the stratigraphic section here all the way to the lava beds up there, which are the last features that you see here. Okay? A rock garden. There are some of the security people around here, when I was up here working on this, and wondered what that crazy guy was doing. You know, there shouldn't be anything happen on a campus that the security people don't know about. And so one of them came up here one time, and he he watched me quite a while, and finally he came over and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm growing a rock garden." And he said, "Why would anybody want to do that? Want to have that?" And I said, "President Trefny wants to have it, and that's why I'm doing it." And he said, "Oh," and he left. And the old crazy professor didn't have any trouble anymore.